I still maintain if we can get enough constitutional sheriffs moving in this country that we can take her back peacefully. The enemy would have us fight physically. And we must fight, but we must keep it peaceful at this time. I wrote the county sheriff America's last hope. And he still is. And I could give you example after example where sheriffs have stood against the federal government, mostly bureaucrats, and every single time that they have, they've won. 100%. Do you know that there were, during COVID-19, do you know that there were over 550 sheriffs who stood against the mandates? 550. And do you know that twice, because of school shootings and murders, that because of what was happening, the first one was 2000, probably 2013, because it was right after Sandy Hook, when Obama and Biden were promising more gun control. 550 sheriffs, this number 550 keeps coming up with these sheriffs. 550 signed a letter, some wrote their own, that I will not allow any more gun control in my county. So don't come in here thinking you're going to take people's guns and make criminals out of law-abiding gun owners. This was what sheriffs were telling the President of the United States and the Vice President. Guess what? They didn't do it. And then just about 3 years ago, again, the sheriffs raised up and said, no, you're not going to do that here. And some of the wording went like this: we will not tolerate any federal agent coming into our counties to confiscate guns from law-abiding citizens. So when you say that, what do they want to do? They want to make you all criminals. So it's okay to take your gun. And they've tried that tactic, especially with IRS problems. And you know something? The IRS should not even exist. This is a highlighted version of the case I won at the United States Supreme Court. And you know what? I sued the Clintons. Did you guys catch that? I sued the Clintons. And I won a case at the U.S. Supreme Court. And I lived to tell about it. I'm glad we're in a church because we're talking about a real miracle here. We saw in '93, we saw Bill Clinton sign into law the Brady Bill. If you'll remember, it was a gun control scheme. And I didn't really worry too much about it. But then on January 21st, 1994, we were having a Sheriff's Association meeting in Phoenix. And there's only 15 counties in Arizona. And 2 sheriffs weren't there. So there was 13 of us, but there were 3 agents of the BATF. And they told us, they handed us a 25-page document and told us at the same time, this document is your marching orders. What you have to do to enforce the Brady Bill. Whoa. Let me tell you folks, I cannot repeat what the other sheriffs were saying. Not here and not outside the church. They totally convinced me that we were not going to do this. And then the agents informed us, they read part of it, and they said, just so you know, full disclosure here, there's a warning that if you fail to comply, you're subject, probably not going to happen, but you're subject to a year in prison or a $10,000 fine or both. So if we don't do what they say, they could throw us in jail. Well, you know we don't work for you, right? And he goes, well, you would think that. But Congress passed said, I don't care if Congress passed 500 laws. You can't hire me and you can't fire me, and I don't work for you. I work for the people of my county, and they're my boss. I didn't know what I was going to do, but by the time I pulled up in my home, it hit me. You're going to sue your own government. I finally ended up in the office with Richard Gardner, and he was a lawyer for the NRA. I told him who I was and what I wanted to do, and the next line out of his mouth changed my life forever. He said, Sheriff, we've already been preparing the paperwork on this case, and we've been praying that you would call. Wow. I said, so what are you preparing? He said, the 10th Amendment challenge to protect the Second. And I said, states' rights? He goes, yeah. The federal government has no authority whatsoever to tell you or any other sheriff what to do. Scalia, writing for the majority, 5-4 split, rendered this most miraculous and amazing case. You would think that somebody just wrote this in response to the COVID mandates or all the other horrible things going on that are happening in our country today. Because there is no constitutional text speaking to this precise question, the answer to the Cleos, it's in the United States Supreme Court decision that the sheriffs that he was talking about, we are the Cleos. More importantly, he says, the answer to the Cleos challenge must be sought in historical understanding and practice. But he quotes a part of a decision called New York v. U.S. that New York sued the federal government in 1992. And this is what he says. From that case, in this one, we have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Don't you wish your state knew that? You're not subject to federal direction. And then later in the order of the court, he clarifies that of the state or any officer of the state or any officer of the political subdivisions of the state. Then he says from that same case, the federal government, we held, may not compel the states to enact or enforce a federal regulatory program. What does that do to COVID? What would that have done to COVID? Well, this decision was already out. It saved the office of sheriff. Because if we had lost, we'd all be answering to the federal government. I went through the Constitution and I wanted to find every single power that we, the states, delegated to them regarding law enforcement. First, treason. Don't you wish the federal government would investigate treason? They can't. They would be investigating themselves. Okay? Number 2, counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is a federal offense. Number 3, felonies committed on the high seas or piracies. Number 4, now you have to go to Article 4, Section 4. They shall protect our borders from invasion. That's a real knee slapper, isn't it? That's a good one. And then 5 is violations of treaties, laws against nations. Do they get any more than that, ever? Are they allowed to give themselves just 2 more? It's against the law. They get to 5, and that's it. How do we know? 10th Amendment. You want to take back your county? You want to take back your state? Have a constitutional sheriff working with his posse and working with a couple of good county commissioners maybe, and you take it back county by county and state by state, and you make the federal government irrelevant. You know what the greatest threat to our God-given American liberty is right now? Our own federal government. So we've got to get busy, and we've got to put the federal government back in its proper lane. Man, do we have a lot of work to do. There's been lots of sheriffs that have stood, like I told you at the beginning. And Doug Trowell will be one of those. And we need to reach out to people and say, isn't it time? Look at what's happening in our country. Even people who really don't see eye to eye with us, maybe they're not like-minded, but maybe they'll see the efficacy of this case and see that what's going on, that if we're going to protect civil rights, don't Democrats want civil rights? I talk about Martin Luther King in all my presentations. He stood for civil rights, and now look, there's only one organization in this country that talks about standing for civil rights, and it's us. It's the CSPOA. No, NAACP, you don't. You're just a branch of the Democrat Party. But there's a lot of good Democrats that want civil rights back, and that we actually protect each other, and we work with each other, and we save America, and we save your families as well as ours. You can't want this to continue anymore. You can't want what's going on to be increased and to reward those who have caused all this disaster and devastation. And we're going to just keep going? There's no place else to go. We're talking about the destruction of our country here, and we've got to take it back. And people like Jerry Sheridan in my county right now, in Maricopa County, is one that we're going to have win there. And then Doug here, and then several others across the country. We're going to start this snowballing. And then we will understand when the Founding Fathers said, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Folks, we must do likewise today. May God bless us as we stand for liberty.